In the center of Salon lies its green hill country. It is not only one of the loveliest parts of the island, it is also the heart of the island's economy. For here, 4,000 feet above sea level, grow some of the world's finest teas. For 100 years now, Salon has been producing tea. And all over the world, wherever tea is drunk, the name Salon is associated with the highest quality teas. Tea is part of the legacy of British rule in Salon. But before tea, there were other plantation crops which brought Salon into the network of world trade. To Europeans of the 16th century, the name Salon meant above all cinnamon. It was the lure of spices that brought Western conquerors to Salon. First the Portuguese and then the Dutch. In the early 19th century, Salon lost her monopoly of the cinnamon trade. But then came coffee. Even before the coming of the British, according to legend, coffee had been cultivated in Salon, but not commercially. The Sinhalese grew it for its fragrant flowers to be used in temple worship. Coffee is believed to have been found growing widely in the hill country near Kandy. It was coffee which, under British rule, laid the foundations of Ceylon's modern plantation industry. Large areas of the hill country were opened up for coffee by British planters. By 1825, the first coffee plantations had come into being. The tea estates of today are really the coffee plantations of the last century, enlarged and adapted for a different crop. But the coffee boom in Ceylon was short-lived. In the 1860s, disaster struck. A virulent plant disease, the coffee rust, spread from estate to estate. A planter of the day expressed the plight of his community in a despairing ode to a fungus.
We've never had a moment's peace since thou hast come among us. Oh, when will thy attention cease, perverse, persistent fungus?
That was the end of the coffee era in Salon. Before the end of the century, dead coffee trees were being exported to England as legs for tea tables. But while coffee was going out, tea was coming in. The great pioneer of Ceylon tea was James Taylor, the son of a Scottish wheelwright. In 1852, James Taylor, then 17 years old, arrived at Lulkondere estate near Kandy. His first job was to plant the estate with coffee. But when the estate changed hands 5 years later, the new owners encouraged him to try other crops too. One of them was tea. Taylor made his first experiments with China-type seed from the botanical gardens at Peradeniya. But in 1867, he felled 19 acres of forest land and sowed them with Assam seed. Here on Lulkondere estate, some of Taylor's original bushes still exist, yielding tea to this day. James Taylor had the enterprise and inventiveness of the true pioneer, because Taylor not only grew tea on a commercial scale, but also manufactured and sold it. He started making tea on the veranda of his bungalow. The leaf was rolled, says a contemporary, on tables on the veranda by hand, from wrists to elbow, while the firing was done on clay stoves over charcoal fires. Taylor then built the first tea house in Salon and equipped it with a tea rolling machine run by water power. Taylor's success gave British planters a new crop to replace the dying coffee and saved the plantation industry in Salon. Meanwhile, Salon was developing another plantation crop, cinchona. From the bark of the cinchona tree comes quinine. In the growing of cinchona too, Taylor was a pioneer, helped and encouraged by the Peradeniya botanical gardens. Cinchona from Salon dominated the world market until overproduction killed the industry. But tea flourished, and the industry continued to expand. Within 10 years of Taylor's first plantings, Salon tea was reaching the world market. Britain and Australia took most of the island's crop. Western Europe, the United States and Russia bought smaller quantities. In 1878, Salon teas were catalogued for the first time at the London tea auctions in Mincing Lane. Very soon, Salon tea became synonymous with quality tea. In the 1890s, small quantities of specially sorted teas, golden tips, fetched fantastic prices up to £36 sterling for a pound. From these beginnings have grown Ceylon's huge tea industry of today. Work begins at 7 o'clock with the muster roll. Techniques and methods of production have changed, but the cycle of a day's work on a tea estate is still not unlike what it was in James Taylor's time. The workers are directed to the field to be plucked during the day. Plucking has been traditionally a job for the nimble fingers of women, but men and boys now share the work in order to cope with the greater yields of today. The heavier tasks of cultivation and pruning have always been men's work. Many millions of tea bushes still in leaf were planted in the last century. But the tea bush today yields more than ever before because of carefully controlled pruning, weeding, spraying, and manuring. To guide and assist the tea planter with the fruits of experiment and research, there is the Salon Tea Research Institute. It carries out experiments in the field and tests in the laboratory so that methods of cultivation can be steadily improved and yields increased. It has also combated pests and diseases that have threatened Ceylon's tea industry from time to time. The most revolutionary development in tea growing is called vegetative propagation. That is, the growing of tea from leaf cuttings in place of seed. Cuttings are taken from mother bushes of high yield. Every year on Ceylon's estates, old tea bushes are being uprooted and high-yielding clones planted to increase output. An acre of this experimental field in the low country yields over 8,000 pounds a year, whereas the average in Salon is only about 900 pounds. While techniques change, the familiar figures of estate life remain. The estate superintendent, who's responsible for management, and the head Kangani, who directly supervise labor. More and more Ceylonese are now taking to estate management as a career. Tea leaves are plucked and sent to the factory for manufacture. Wire shoots carry the bags from distant fields. Others are brought by hand. Meanwhile, in the factory, the previous day's leaf is going through the processes of manufacture. green tea leaf is withered, rolled, sifted and dried. And finally, it is packed in chests. Round the export trade in tea has grown a whole pattern of life. Tea provides employment for many others besides the workers on the estates. It enlists specialized skills like those of the tea taster. As it passes through the channels of the export trade, tea creates jobs for thousands of men and women, from office to auction rooms, to warehouse, to dockside. The growth of the tea industry during the last 100 years has helped to change the face of the port of Colombo. It was the tea trade which prompted the improvement of the Colombo harbour in the last century by the construction of a breakwater. Since then, continuous enlargements and improvements have made Colombo one of the greatest and most modern tea ports of the world. But Colombo is no longer the only outlet for exports. The ancient harbour of Gaul has been improved and is being used to serve the export trade. Trincomalee, once a naval military base, has been transformed into a great commercial port. Another new development is in the composition of estate labour. British planters imported immigrant labour from South India, and many of the workers are still of Indian origin. But in recent times, Ceylonese labour has entered the estates in considerable numbers. The tea industry for the greater part of a century has been the main source of Salon's national wealth. From it, in normal times, has come 2/3 of Salon's export revenue. The income from tea has helped to create Salon's structure of modern welfare and social services. Today, Salon is building new industries in order to provide employment for a mounting population and reduce her dependence on a few export crops. But still in Salon, the economic weather continues to be influenced largely by rising or falling prices of tea. And from tea, the country derives much of the earnings which will help to finance her future development and to raise the living standards of her people.